So with that, let's begin our 2025 ASLO Award presentations, and Ilana Berman-Frank will introduce.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm really happy to be here and welcome our amazing slate of awardees for the ASLO 2025 meeting. And today I'm really happy to introduce our Redfield awardee, Michael Pace. But before I introduce Mike, I would like to actually, the slides aren't going ahead, but so I would like to thank the people that are doing the hard work, and these are the award committee members, and each award has their own committee or subcommittee and members who work hard to go through the nominations and make the selection. And actually, I would also like to thank all of you who nominate the awardees and who've done the hard work of nominating and writing the letters and writing the recommendation letters. So keep that going. It's a really important process and a really important task for the ASLO community to recognize the excellence of its members throughout their career stages. And so thank you for the Redfield Lifetime Achievement Subcommittee members. And the Redfield Award honors an aquatic scientist for major long-term achievements in the fields of limnology and oceanography, including research, education, and service to the community and society. So today I'm really happy to present Michael Pace for his substantial contributions to fundamental understanding of food webs, nutrient cycling, and primary production in lakes, rivers, and oceans, their implications for management and conservation, and for important services to the aquatic sciences community. I won't go through the long list of achievements that Mike has, but I actually just want to give a few quotes from the nomination letters and from the recommendation. So some of these quotes are, Mike is known to ask questions that push people out of their comfort zone, to push the boundaries of ecological theory, and to think about the next big experiment. He has brought experiments that have changed the way we think about ecosystem change in the coastal lagoons. His remarkable ability to translate ecological theory across ecosystems, whether they be fresh or salty, wet or dry, and to bridge the gap between fundamental science and its application to environmental challenges. One of the most important things as we go on in our professional lives as aquatic scientists is also to mentor the next generation of scientists. And Mike has really been very involved in that and involved in the ASLO community. And one of the quotes, again, from the letters that I liked, Mike encouraged the ethic of curiosity, thoughtfulness, and big picture thinking among the students involved. He'd make sure they'd take time to look at the lake, explore their surroundings, and think about what was going on around them before rushing off to download data or process samples. His legacy lies in the success of many people who have been the students, postdoc, and collaborators. And I'll just end again with a quote from the letters, that adding Mike to a team always makes it better. So Mike, please come up and receive the award. Okay. Stage is yours.
Well, thanks so much. Yes, I want to start with some thank yous, of course. And let me go back, I missed my first slide there. Okay, yes, I want to thank my nominators. I'm very grateful for those kind words that Alana just quoted some words from, the letters, and of course the awards committee, the subcommittee especially the subcommittee for the Redfield Award. And I've been a member of ASLO, I think since 1975, and I've benefited so much from being a part of this community, and I'm grateful for everything that ASLO has given me. So I appreciate that, and thank you, ASLO. Now, of course, I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for the support of great students, great collaborators, colleagues, and of course, the support of my family. So I want to thank them as well. I want to especially recognize my graduate students, postdocs, and techs who have had the privilege of working with at the University of Virginia. They've really enriched my scientific life, and I'm deeply appreciative of all the work that they've done, and they're great. They have been a great crew. Also, I've had great collaborators to work with, especially these people here, and we've worked on a series of research projects that we call the Cascade Program or the Cascade Project, which is really a series of whole lake studies that have addressed various kinds of questions. And so I've been asked, how does one maintain collaborative relationships with people over a long period of time? And my answer to that is to spend time together. That time spent together really builds friendship and trust, and it leads to deep scientific engagement that really is the process of great collaboration. So it's been wonderful to work with these people. Also, for the last 17 years or so, I've been part of the Virginia Coastal Research Program, long-term research program, LTER, which is the study of the effects of sea level rise on barrier islands, lagoons, and salt marshes in the Virginia coastal system. And there's a series of hydrodynamic and climatic forces that are pressing very hard in the coastal environment, as you well know. And there's sort of this contest going on between the geomorphic processes that structure these systems as well as the ecological interactions. And this group here is really interested in understanding the mechanisms that are going to be determining the outcome of that contest. And they've been a great group to work with, so quite an inspiration. Now, we're all influenced by people, and I certainly have been influenced, and not by these people, but by some really stellar thinkers in my scientific career. And if I look back, well, Gene Likens taught me a lot about ecosystems and about integrity, both for institutions and individuals as scientists, and so I learned so much from Gene. Dave Carl, when I was at the University of Hawaii, taught me about oceanography and the many, many microbial processes that structure ocean ecosystems. When I was a postdoc at McGill University, Rob Peters, was influential, and I learned from Rob about the importance of critical thinking and also about the benefit of comparing ecosystems to make generalizations. As a grad student, Larry Pomeroy was really helpful to me in sort of helping me see the big picture and put the pieces together to understand ecosystems as a whole. And that had a big influence on me at the time. And also, my major professor at the University of Georgia was Karen Porter, and she gave me a great deal of encouragement and guidance, and that was critical during that time. So I'm really grateful to these influencers who had such a big impact on me, and many, many others who I can't take the time to name now. So normally I would go on now and talk a little bit about science and maybe talk about these lakes and other interesting places I've worked in, but I'm not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I think science is in crisis. And we really have to think about and talk about, and I hope we can have some dialogue about what we are confronting. So I'm going to start here. This is my granddaughter, 6 months old. She's studying her fish. Now we could ask, she's off to a good start, but we could ask, is there a future in aquatic science for her? And I hope so, and I expect there is, and maybe one day she could become a limnologist and an oceanographer. But I think that kind of is in jeopardy to some degree, and I'm worried about her future, but I'm even more worried about the future of the early career scientists and the students in this room. I'm worried about our ASLO community and really the whole enterprise of science. So I think this is kind of where we are, and I want to try to address some of the issues that we're confronting. So I'd like to start with this helpful and inspiring quote from Martin Luther King, which says, "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." So that's great and something we're going to need to keep in mind as we go ahead here. Now, I'm going to make a little substitution here, and I hope you won't mind. I think King actually, of course, got this right, but I'm not sure about the geometry. And I'm going to suggest that the moral universe is actually a spline with a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns. And yes, as King would say, we're going to get there. We're going to get to justice. But in fact, we're in a very bad spot right now. And I don't really have to explain to this audience what's going on in science and some of the threats we're under. Nature pointed this out and said it's hard to understand, or to put in words, the extent of the damage being done to the U.S. research enterprise. And you're well aware of that, and there are many threats kind of evolving at the moment, and we're trying to come to terms with them. Now, you might think this is just an American problem, and ASLO's an international society, so in that context, it would be just a parochial issue. But it's bigger than that, right? Because what affects science in the U.S. will have many spillover effects. Some of them will be on many international collaborations and activities that we're engaged in with other partners around the world. And in addition to that, of course, they're imitators to the folks that are attacking U.S. science, and they are the same kinds of phenomena are occurring elsewhere, and those tend to feed back onto research and could have bad effects, not just in the U.S., but in other countries. So I think Nature really got it right when they said, an assault, their headline there, an assault on science anywhere is an assault on science everywhere. And so what I'm going to try to do now is outline some questions that I think we need to think about. And I think these are important. I'm going to suggest some possibilities for how we might address them, but I'm almost certain that you're going to think that those are inadequate in many ways. And yes, I don't have the answers. I hope I have some good questions worthy of our thought. And maybe there'll be some time at the end to discuss these a little bit. So the first one is, of course, how will we fund the next generation? The withdrawal of support will fall hardest, of course, on graduate students and postdocs and early career scientists. So, and this will also affect grant support for early career scientists if funding is diminished, which seems very likely. So this is going to be a really critical problem for us to address. And I think there are a number of aspects of this that we need to think about. First off, of course, institutions are going to have to sort of reroute their funding to make it more, to defend stipends and so on, and to support students, and see where we can reroute, if you will, sources of funding to support our individual scientists. We're also going to have to think a little bit about how the expectations we have for grants for early career scientists. There are hopefully some opportunity to look other places than the normal avenues of federal support, but we're going to probably have to change our expectations in this regard. And then we're going to have to, I hope we can benefit some from our international, being in international organizations, because I think we're going to have to look, at least from the American point of view, look more internationally, and hopefully our contacts with international collaborators can be helpful to students and early career scientists as they try to establish research programs and maybe look more internationally for the mechanisms to make those occur. So, in essence, I think we're going to have to look under every rock for sources of support. And our ability to alter support and move it to different places is going to be greater at some institutions than others. And so I think in some cases we're going to have to try to work together and co-support people where we can. So that's one question. Another is how are we going to diversify in this climate? From my point of view, we made a commitment already to this, right? And I just don't see how we can stop or back away from that. And of course, I believe ASLO's made an enormous amount of progress in this regard. This is a picture of Daniel Pauly. He was a plenary speaker at the ASLO 2023 meeting in Palma. And here he's addressing or meeting with the ASLO students at that meeting, the ASLO Multicultural Program, which is a long-term program that's been part of ASLO for many, many years. And it's operative at this meeting here, and ASLO students are attending this meeting as well. So we've made progress, we've got a long way to go, but it's clear that funding for this kind of thing is not going to be available to us in the future. So we're going to have to look elsewhere for this kind of support. And that might come from some private institutions, philanthropic organizations, and the like. However, there's already signs that some of those are withdrawing support for this kind of work. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to work out. But, it's likely and possible that other charitable organizations are going to stand up, especially as the darkness kind of descends, if that's what happens. So another issue for me is how will crucial studies be maintained? Long-term studies may be underfunded or unfunded as we go forward. And we know these are so critical for characterizing both local ecosystems and global level processes. So support for these, for the students and the postdocs and the techs that make these things go is also critical and might be much more limited in the future. And this is going to be a really tough one to deal with. Here's just one example of a long-term study that I've been involved with that shows the phenological maxima of zooplankton bosmina and the American shad larvae in the Hudson River. And you can see there's a pretty good correspondence between the appearance and relative index of these two species as they come through the system over time each year, with some interesting variability. And there are 24 years of data there. And this kind of variability has important influences on the recruitment of American shad. So the point of this is that, we only get these kind of long-term studies with continued investment and support, and we're going to have to figure out how to maintain that. Now, maybe we can do it through, sort of better and cheaper monitoring. That's kind of the vision of that slide over there, or that image over there. And in that context, perhaps we can automate some of the workflows and the data analysis part of the process. Yesterday's plenary speaker, when he was talking about AI, addressed that specific point and said, we can make some real progress there. And that could make things easier, cheaper, faster, and would help us in this coming situation. But of course, science isn't like an autonomous vehicle. People are still required, and we're going to, again, this goes back to my first question, we're really going to need those people or figure out how to sustain people as we get into this phase. So this is another critical question. Now the next question is, how will we maintain, if you will, the trend towards solution science? It seems to me that there's a great deal of effort being focused on figuring out how to answer or address questions and to address the problems of sustainability. And in fact, it's no doubt, or it seems highly likely that the next generation of scientists is going to be much more engaged with this kind of research because that's what they want to do. So I don't see any turning back from this, but it's going to require, again, some major thinking and efforts on our part to keep this going. This is just one example of that kind of work. Again, that's something that I was involved in, led by one of my former PhD students, where we developed, or she developed, along with this team, a globalization, a database that provides information on seafood trade around the world. So global data set on seafood trade, both wild caught and aquacultured seafood. So, this is the kind of thing that I think is going to occupy us so much more going forward. And how are we going to get there? Well, of course, other providers are going to need to act. As I mentioned, we might look to other government organizations. States are going to need to do more, possibly at higher levels of government. May be possible to also help with some of this kind of need. There may be institutes, and many institutes have sprung up in universities and research centers with this specific objective, right, to foster solution-oriented science and sustainability research. And that has engaged a lot of limnologists and oceanographers and kind of brought us into new questions and new kinds of interactions. And so, again, we're going to need that support, and maybe some of that can come from funds provided by private donors and, again, private foundations. But I don't think this is obviously a complete answer. And it remains to be seen how we're going to maintain this. So my next question is, how will ideas be developed and tested? And I think, academic freedom could be seriously diminished as we move ahead. In fact, there are all kinds of things going on in some states that are already kind of suppressing people's freedom to do certain kinds of work. And that could easily get worse. So, and then another thing is we just may not have time to develop and test ideas because of the effort we're going to be undergoing to maintain existing programs and people. So that could also wash away kind of the development of new ideas and so on. But without that idea testing and development and that part of science, we're just not going to be making progress. I mean, that's absolutely fundamental that we somehow maintain this going into the future. So, well, one thought I have about this is to consider certain kinds of institutions as freedom patches. And maybe that's not a great term, but what I mean by that is there are some institutions, and I spent a big part of my career at this place, the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, where the scientists are to some degree insulated from the whims of funding. And there's time to think. And I think these kinds of places, and maybe other kinds of places that operate a bit more as think tanks, can serve us well in the future in terms of providing centers or locations where ideas can be considered, that the community can come together and work on ideas as well. So this might be one approach to dealing with this rather difficult problem. Another thought is to manage retreat or have managed retreat. And by this I don't mean either retreating for the sea or the kind of retreat you might have to do to maintain research programs under limited funding. What I really mean is the kind of actually having retreats of your team, your research group, your collaborators and whatnot in places where you have, let's say, the freedom, the time to work on ideas. And I can say with a lot of assurance that the ability of the Cascade Research Project, the people I referred to earlier as collaborators, to go to this place, this cabin, and work together on ideas and research efforts was just fundamental. And we made so much progress by just having that opportunity to be together and work together at a place like that. So again, I think this is going to be one of our big challenges. All right, well, what will be the career paths for folks in the future? Government science positions are likely to be fewer. Reduced government funding is coming to us, so that's going to eliminate some kinds of support. And this may be taken up, this may also reduce private sector contracts and public sector grants. So, this is yet another kind of dark cloud. And then, of course, higher education has its own headwinds, and this may, because of reduced numbers of applicants, so this may also limit positions in the future. So none of this bodes particularly well for what we think of as the job market in our field, but I don't really think it's quite that grim. Well, maybe it is. This is an old PhD comics thing that's called the Professor Ponzi scheme, wherein the professor encourages other folks to come into the field and eventually the whole thing collapse under the weight of too many people and too little funding. Well, I don't mean to give you such a grim portrait. So I think, again, where's this support going to come from? Well, other governments, nonprofits are going to have opportunities, and state governments and other kinds of government entities are going to have to take on more work because the federal government's going to be doing less. You know, there may be more work in private enterprise. American students are going to have to look internationally, as I've already suggested. And then I wouldn't give up on education, because I still think that there are going to be people needed in education, especially as folks my age, a fairly large cohort, you know, move toward retirement. So, you know, there will be and there should be opportunities. And, you know, I think we've been working on this for quite a while. This is an old, now decade-old bulletin article that talks about these very challenges. And we've been thinking about these things. And I think to some degree, maybe not as completely as we should have, but to some degree, preparing ourselves and our students for the future. This is one diagram here from my own institution where we have a program called PhD Plus, which helps students envision how to get where they want to go and go through a series of thought exercises as part of that process. So we've been through tough times before. Just think back to the pandemic or the Great Recession. You know, we overcame those. We will, of course, overcome this. And I think we'll get there, but it's just, there's going to be a real challenge in the short term. So my last question is, how will we organize? It seems to me that, you know, loss is underway already, and we may be, of course, constantly dealing with misinformation that vilifies science and has a negative impact on what we're trying to do. This little video comes from, well, let me say this first. I think we're going to have to align across the sciences, not just the aquatic sciences, but larger alignments as well, and get beyond sort of slogans and start to document the cost of things that are being sort of neglected in the form of damage, economic loss, loss of jobs, loss of lives. That's clearly going to happen. So part of this will be supporting our leaders, and we're going to really need strong, tough, impactful people to lead us here, because I think the risk for those people is going to be high, and so we're going to have to be behind them. This is a little video that was taken from our Stand Up for Science March in Charlottesville a couple weeks ago.
Snake oil, cure-all treatments, right? Yeah. We had to fund to disprove what was ultimately causing harm. Okay.
Yeah, so my wife took that on her phone, and you know, one of the reasons I wanted to show it to you is because that was one of the doctors from the University of Virginia Medical Center who works on infectious disease at sort of a global scale. So I think we need those folks, right? We need to ally with those folks, and they're having and will have the same problems we are having, and so they will be important allies to us as well. So let me summarize my 4 key have-tos. First, we have to fund the next generation and find career paths for people sort of at all costs. That's got to be a priority. We need to continue to document the changes in the world as the environmental world that we're so dedicated to, even if we have to do it with less funding and fewer personnel. We need to solve problems and to continue to work on these sustainability issues that engage us with communities and other groups and show the impact and importance of our work. And finally, we need to keep this idea, sustain this the potential for new ideas and the development of these ideas that always requires time. So without that sort of academic freedom, it's going to be really hard to advance our science over the next several years. Now, finally, I want to speak directly to the ASLO students, those you here in the room. The first thing I want to say to you guys is, look, don't be distracted, discouraged, or deterred. Remember that the spline, right, that moral spine of the universe is behind you. And we will get there. This will work out. And the last thing I want to say is, look, and I want to say this on behalf of the mentors and the scientists in this room, that you belong, right? We're behind you, and we will support you. So let me repeat that to the students. You belong, we believe in you, and we will support you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there time for some questions? Looks like I have 5 minutes here. If people want to come up to the microphone, I think we can have some discussion, I hope. Please don't shoot the messenger, okay?
No, to the other side, I thank you tremendously for stepping outside of the likely talk and giving this one, because I think that it is.
Thank you.
I think it's really important, and it's something that we face. And I personally have been in this business almost as long as you, and I have spent a lot of time working with long-term data sets, with little funding, and with students over long terms with great success, with great happiness. And I spend my Social Security check, as long as I have it, to support my technicians so that we can keep going out and doing research on the research vessel that I get time on, because I find some foundation that needs a tour, and their tour happens to include our stations. But what I'd like to ask is, we saw this 8 years ago or 7 years ago at a smaller scale, and some of us learned to spin what we do in such a way that the robots wouldn't find the words that meant what they thought, and that would still allow us to do research until somebody found out. How do you feel about pushing the edge of what you say and what you mean in terms of trying to get support from the agencies, for example?
Yeah, if the agencies have money, of course, I think we need to address the kinds of issues that they want us to address with our research proposals. I attended a lunchtime organization group meeting of RECOS, Research and Education Consortium for Ocean Sciences, I think. And, we were talking about this very problem, right? And how to present ourselves, address both agency funding issues and other issues. And a lot of it comes back to this point I made about, emphasizing, at the public scale, at least, the losses we're encountering. And then on the research side, I think, yes, trying to get more into the solution mode about what we're doing. But we have to also maintain the fundamental science and the need for discovery and novel observations and so on.
Great presentation, thank you. I think something that's kind of fundamentally missing from scientists is that, we talk about the leadership, you mentioned that we need to take these roles. You don't see scientists in politics, and I think that's a huge gap and something that leaves us vulnerable and at the whims of non-scientist brains. And for yourself, as you're looking at the next chapter of your life, you're almost old enough to be president. And
I was president of this society.
Higher office. But I think that that's something that scientists, we need to look more at as being not just involved at the community level as scientists, but I think we need to get more involved politically and run for office. It would take us obviously away from our field work and these things that we enjoy, but we understand it best how that money should be spent, what should be saved, and what's kind of saving the public from themselves, if you will. And I think that's something that those in the room maybe start looking at more. When the research dollars dry out, take a stab at running for office.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your talk. I wish it was a different talk, but
Me too.
I appreciate how important and timely it is. So the question that I have is really about communication. Regardless of if you're applying for grant funding or talking to philanthropists to ask for money, at the end of the day, you are trying to ultimately convince someone that what you are doing is of value. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the public distrust that we are experiencing right now is ultimately rooted in a lack of understanding of the value that what we can bring. So my question to you, and I pose this to everyone here, is how do we change the way that we talk about ourselves and our science to convince a much broader swath of people that what we do is of value to not just science, but to society as a whole?
Right, yeah. I partly try to address that with this point about, impacts on economics, jobs, et cetera. And that was one of the things we were talking about at lunch yesterday. But that has to be a wider conversation. And I think we do a lot in science communication, and some of it's very effective, and we just need to keep pounding away at it, I suppose. But one of the other features might be the leader thing and getting more involved and having some get more involved in politics. So I got this message here that says time's up, so I better get off the stage. Thank you very much. Thank you for this.